Hi, hello, and welcome back to MERAKI'S Method. This is our rock and roleplay series where we discuss all things roleplay and everything related to that. Today we're going to have a little quick one because I'm fully aware that it is Shadowlands release week and everybody's probably busy playing Shadowlands and probably not doing all that much roleplay right now. But anyway, as we did last week, we started off with basically what the series is going to be and a few rough ideas of what roleplay is in different genres. So for today we're going to talk about some terms and acronyms that you might want to get acquainted with before you dive into the world of roleplay, or even if you're in the world of roleplay you might have come across them and just not known what they mean. So we're going to run across those today just to give you an idea of what those things mean so that you're not caught out when you're roleplaying online in World of Warcraft. Or I believe a lot of them transfer across a lot of different games. You'll find them just as relevant in any kind of online digital setting, I believe. So let's dive right into it, shall we? First and foremost, one of the most important, and they're kind of a pair, the most important pair are IC and OOC. IC stands for in character. That means if you see someone who is IC, we're talking about IC, that means they're in character or they're talking about something that's in character. You'll often find there's an IC tag on certain roleplay add-ons that you can get, like TRPs and different things like that. We're going to talk about those next week, but for those you'll find they have an IC or an OOC tag that you can tag yourself if you're in character at that moment or if you're out of character, which is where OOC comes in. That's what that stands for, out of character. That means you're not currently role-playing that character. So if you are, for example, say your character is a merchant who lives in the city and goes about his business and has just quite a simple normal life, but you quite like to do raids and contents and mythic pluses and whatever else it is that you'd be doing. So you can set yourself to out of character. OOC, you can set that OOC tag to let people know that you're out in the world doing all these things, but you're not in character. That character is not there doing those things. You're out of character. That's what those two mean, and those two are kind of like the main two, the base two. You sort of need to know what those acronyms mean, so that you can accurately gauge who is and isn't available for roleplay at that moment. Although remembering to change those tags is a skill few but not all possess. Spoilers, I'm one of those people that does not possess the ability to remember to change that tag. You win some, you lose some. The next one we're going to talk about is a loller, which is LOLLER, a loller. Which is another word. It's not used as much these days, but it used to be used quite frequently. You might also call them trolls, but it's someone who is not participating in the roleplay, but he's in a city or he's in another hub or an area where there's roleplay taking place, but instead of just going about his business or doing whatever he's doing, he's actively trying to interfere with, harass, or disrupt the roleplay that's going on. This could be like dropping toys, spamming emotes, spamming spell effects, all kinds of things they can use to basically disrupt the roleplay that's going on. They are basically characters or players that are out of character who've come into a setting where people are in character and are just not engaging with the roleplay. They're just trying to disrupt things. So those would be lollers or trolls. We're going to, again, down the line, once we've covered a few of our basics, we're going to get into how you would deal with those kind of situations and those kind of people in the game and what you need to do and different things like that. So we're going to get into all that in more detail further on, but for now I'm just covering what those things are so that when it comes to talking about them, nobody's like, wait, what is this, what's happening? We're covering our bases early. So the next one is a bad RP, which is in game it shows up as BDRP. So if you see someone saying something is BDRP, it normally means it's bad RP. Now personally, I don't get with this one. So this one, I'm not a fan of this one, and I could rant for a solid hour on why I don't like this one. But it's normally used by people who don't condone someone else's roleplay. And the reason for this is normally that it breaks lore, or it breaks the game, or it's not viable in the universe or something like that. And I can understand it in that sense, but a lot of times it's used for much more, it's used much more frequently than I think it's actually needed. Like, someone will call something bad RP even though there is absolutely context for it within the World of Warcraft environment and the World of Warcraft universe. Even though there absolutely is possibility for that kind of thing, people will still label it as bad RP because they don't particularly like it. So it gets overused and abused, as you know, a lot of things like that do. So I don't particularly condone or agree with the use of it, but that's what it means if you ever come across it. So the next one is OP. And this one means overpowered. It stands for overpowered. And that's if a character if they're more able than they perhaps should be. If they can, a good example is if you're watching the cinematics, the BFA opening cinematic, you have Anduin standing in the middle of a battlefield and he like cries to the heavens and he reaches up and he basically resurrects almost an entire army. That, some might consider, like, he's obviously the leader of a faction. There's an argument there for that being, cinematic, artistic license and all those kind of things. But for the normal day-to-day character, that's probably not within their realm of ability. But again, this is one of those tricky ones because we are living in a magical universe with characters that are doing, technically doing all these like great feats and defeating all these big bads and all this different kind of stuff. So there's a lot of like groundwork there to say that those characters could be just that powerful. But a lot of times you'll find in RP communities, to try and keep cohesion and keep things like functioning, people will prefer characters to not be just as powerful as those kind of like named NPCs can be in certain situations. Just because if every single player character could do things like that all the time, there would be, nothing would be special anymore. It would kind of lose its traction. And if everyone could do that, it would drastically change and I think limit a lot of the stories that you could do and stuff like that. But that, again, is something we'll get into much deeper later on. For now, all you need to know that is someone saying something is OP, that's because they think it's overpowered. They think that character shouldn't be able to do that and that they're being more powerful than they ought to be. QQ is another one that's not used as much anymore, but it used to be used quite a bit when I first started. It basically means someone that's like complaining or upset or distressed to some degree about what's going on because they don't like it, they don't agree with it, they don't think it's right, so they're QQing. I think it's meant to be like a crying face. I'm not exactly sure where the Q's come from, but that's what it means if you ever see it. The next one is ERP, and this is a controversial one, boys and girls. We shall get into this one again, like as with most of these topics. They deserve discussion in their own rights, and this is not the time and place during launch week to do it. So down the line we'll get to that. But this one's ERP, which stands for erotic roleplay. This is a controversial, touchy, sensitive subject, and to the point of it can completely divide and disintegrate like communities so fast. But we will get into not the pros and cons, because that's not what I intend to do at all. We'll get into explaining it more, into explaining that division and where that can arise and different things like that later on. For now, that's all you need to know. Basically, it's content that is and should be 18 plus, and therefore there's a lot of questions about its place in a game that's for 13 plus. So, but that's what that acronym means, should you ever come across it. A very, very important one is canon and lore. The lore, if you don't already know, maybe you do, but I thought I'd throw it in here just in case. The lore is the story of the game. It's all the books, it's all the other resources, it's all the in-game quest lines and dialogue and all those things that add together to create the story and to create the universe that the game is. So that is the lore. It's basically the story of the whole game all together. And that's kind of like, that's the world you're playing in, as it were. So you will occasionally find people using that one to say if a particular character they feel is lore breaking or is, contradictory to the provided lore. And again, it's a complicated situation because the lore is not flawless. The lore sometimes contradicts itself, and it is a game. There's books as well, but even with the game and with all the books and with all of the content that we've been offered from Blizzard, we still don't have a completely airtight understanding of the universe and the world and every single thing that has happened in it. So there's a lot of, and their timelines are notoriously sketchy, even by their own, determinations. So, the lore can be tricky even where we have given lore, but there's also a lot of places where we don't have given lore and we're just kind of left to guess and to assume, which is never good. But that's what it is. That's what the lore is. Canon's an interesting word. Canon basically means an established fact. So that means if someone says, for example, the most recent example that I can think of off the top of my head is there's 2 human characters called Matthias Shaw, that's the one, and Flynn Fairbrace. I have never played the Alliance storyline, so I don't really know these characters more than, sort of vague passing glances. But they were, one's a spy master with SI7 as far as I'm aware, and the other guy is a Kultiran guy who I don't really know very well. But, and, they're both in the lore, they go through the whole storyline of BFA, all these kind of things. And recently, post-BFA storyline, Blizzard have announced, did they release a travel book or something? I'm not sure exactly how they did it, but basically Blizzard released a story that, in which they were a couple. So that made that canon, which made a lot of people happy, because a lot of people had been shipping them anyway, because apparently they're kind of like birds of a feather. And to be fair, from what I have vague understandings of, it does seem like a perfect match. But anyway, that's what I mean. And Blizzard released that story, and in that story, they were noted as being together, so that makes that fact canon. That makes that established lore and agreed upon facts. The actual game developers have said this is how it happened, so that is now canon. But canon goes a bit farther than that. We're going to talk about it again in a later episode, but there are different kinds of canon. That is the game. That's the game lore and the established facts. But a lot of the time you'll find that realms, guilds, and people even have their own canon, versions of canon, or additions to the canon that are not necessarily contradicted by the game lore, but are just additional to it. But we'll go into that again in its own topic. Okay, the last 2 kind of go hand in hand, but they're 2 controversial ones as well. They can cause a lot of arguments and a lot of division as well, like a lot of these things can, because if you put more than one person in a room, you're gonna have a fight. So the first is power emoting. Power emoting is the term given to a particular kind of emote, and this is a kind of emote where you take control of that other person's character, or you take control of their reactions. So for example, if you were in a fight, if your character was in a fight and you're emoting that you punch this person, normally you'd try to punch that person, and then they'd get to say, oh no, I dodge, or oh yeah, you punched me. Power emoting would be saying, oh, I'm going to punch this person and I hit them and they are knocked out. And that's because you're overplaying your hand. You don't have the power to say how that affects them, because you don't know that character and that's not your character. But you only have the power to determine your own character's actions. So a power emote is where you take liberties with another person's character that are not yours to take, such as deciding how they react to your moves. Then the second one is a metagaming. Metagaming is very similar because you're predetermining the outcome, as it were, but metagaming goes a bit further. If you were say you knew someone was in the woods, because you have them on your friends list, so you can see that they're in the woods, and you go out there and you engage with them, and they're like, oh, how did you find me? And you're like, well, I used my friends list, because the friends list doesn't exactly exist in game. So you metagame that information. You give your character information that he didn't have, just because you have an out of character awareness of the situation. If you know a character is in trouble because someone has said in guild chat, oh no, I'm being mugged, so something's going down, so you deliberately go to find that character, you're again metagaming, because you're using information that you have out of character to give your character that information in character when they had no way of actually knowing that in character. A very, very simple, basic example of this is the names that are floating above everybody's head. Everybody has their name floating above their head in this game. But that's a game mechanic. That's not actually, people are not actually having their names floating above their head when they're walking around the city in the actual setting. So, You don't actually know anybody's name, but if you walked up to someone you'd never met and just said, "Hello, Robert, how are you today?" That person would be like, "How do you know my name?" Because you metagamed their name by reading it from out of character information. So it's one of those things you have to be aware of. Like, try and determine what your character knows and separate that from what you know. I've found with characters that are in particular situations where they're getting a lot of information, and because I'm a guild leader and I also have a lot of information, I keep like a notebook. Either you can do it via add-ons, or you can just get yourself a little notebook, keep it on your desk, and just keep a note of the information that character knows in character, just so that you have it, because, you know, then you can say, "Oh yeah, I did know that because I learned that this time." And it stops that ever becoming a problem. But it can become a problem. And again, if it ever does, like if you ever do any of these things and you only realize it after the fact that you have, and that you made a mistake and that you didn't want to, and, you know, it was understandable, just say that. Just say, "Listen, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Listen, here's how we'll fix it. You can do this. You know, we'll do a soft retcon or something like that." Retcon's another one. There's another term that wasn't even on my scripted list. But a retcon is when you retroactively change something. So basically something that's, if you'd already walked up and said, "Hi Robert, how are you doing today?" and you retconned that, you'd then whisper that person and say, "Listen, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, or I didn't know, let's just retcon that." And you'd basically just rewind and pretend that bit never happened. You're retroactively changing the fact, changing the conditions of the situation. So that's what a retcon is. But again, we have a whole topic on that too, friends, because that can get complicated as well. But yeah, so that I think is all of the terms that I can think of. Like I said, apparently my list wasn't even flawless, but that's all the ones that I can think of. If you can think of any more, if you can think of any that I've missed, or if you can think of any new ones, because I'm like an old dog now, can't teach me new tricks. So if you know any new acronyms or any new terms or anything like that that you've noticed or popped up, or that you still don't know what they are, drop them in the comments down below and I will absolutely add them to this list. We'll make a little compendium of additional extras. But other than that, friends, I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I hope this was as short as I intended it to be. Next week we're going to talk about factions and races and different things you can do with those, and why you might want to choose one over the other and things like that. Again, if you have any questions regarding factions and classes, drop them down below or drop them into our Discord. Until then, friends, you will find me on your RP Talks on a Thursday evening. The links to that are below. There's a Discord server for that as well. We talk about all things roleplay. It's live via Twitch on a Thursday evening at 8 PM, so you can come along, jump in and ask us questions in real time, and offer your sides of our different topics that we're discussing. There's a Discord for that as well below, where we do all kinds of roleplay discussions. Otherwise, you can find all my social links below. Leave us a comment if you have anything you'd like to add to this list, or any questions for next week, and I will see you, friends, then. Bye!